Okay. Um, this one's a bit of a weird one. I've been meaning to do this one for a while, but as it happens to be the Chinese New Year, I thought I'd give this one a bit of a go. I don't know much about Chinese New Year or much about the Chinese community, full stop, but I do know that it's the Chinese New Year. And it's the year of the rabbit. Now, I know that it's not really something that we observe here in the UK or really anywhere else in the world. You know, it's something that kind of gets passed over a lot, which is something I observe pretty much year in, year out. That the only real religions and festivals and feasts that ever really get a lot of attention are the Christian religious festivals. They're the ones that really get any attention and any, you know, real special treatment. But the Chinese, they take these things very seriously and they have a lot of different festivals throughout the year. But today is Chinese New Year. So happy Chinese New Year to anyone and everyone who observes it. There is a Chinese community in a lot of different Western countries around the world. And I think we do have one somewhere here in London, or someone in London. I think there actually is a Chinese community somewhere in London. So they probably will be observing the Chinese New Year. And anyone born in the year of the rabbit, this is your year. I think it's supposed to be lucky for those that are born in whatever year it is. I'm the year of the dog. I don't know when that will be, but yeah, that's so yeah. But as the year goes on, there are many different religious festivals that happen that we will ignore and we will just pretend don't exist until we get to things like Easter, which will get loads and loads of attention. Everyone will go mad over it. And in fact, if you look in all the shops right now, every time you walk into any shop right now, you will find Easter eggs and mini eggs in the Cadbury's cream eggs, which I absolutely love. Right? But you will find them. They've been there since Christmas, which is another one that gets a lot of attention. You know, but Easter is not a Christian, well, it's not Christian for a start, it's pagan. And it started in the Nordic regions of Norway and other areas like that. And it started as a way to, and what it's there for, how it started was to celebrate the harvests, which is what it was for. It was to celebrate the harvest and to celebrate the abundance of the harvest and to be grateful for everything that the sun had provided and their sun god, and to celebrate Odin and yeah, all their other gods. I did look it up. I've forgotten a lot of it, but I did look it up. I remember Odin. They do celebrate Odin a lot. Odin is their most prevalent one. And yeah, but it is to celebrate the harvest. It's a harvest festival. And even in England, when I was growing up, I have vague recollections in primary school where we had our harvest festivals roughly around the same time as, well, as Lent's kind of started, you know, the Catholic versions of Lent. You know, when Lent started and you get the harvest festival, that started in the Nords, up in the Nordic regions of Sweden and the other areas. It is to celebrate a harvest, it is to celebrate abundance. It is pagan, it is not religious, it is not Catholic, it is not Christian. And we took it, we actually just took it from them. And we changed it over so that it made sense for us. So we could celebrate it as well. You know, when we became a religious country here in England, we took over what they had and turned it into something we could use here. And instead of celebrating Odin, we celebrated God and his bountiful harvest and for what he gave us. And then, of course, the Catholics then celebrated Lent for 40 days. And then we get Easter, which is the death and resurrection of Christ. Yeah, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, fact, that concept actually is, that particular part of the celebration is specifically ours, but the whole thing together isn't. But that bit is, that actual bit of us celebrating Christ is ours. But the 40 days and the harvest festival thing is pagan. It doesn't belong to us. It doesn't belong to the Catholics, it doesn't belong to the Church of England. It belongs to the Nords and to everybody in the Nordic areas. Belongs to paganism. So yeah, and it's about celebrating solstice. It's about celebrating abundance and glorifying Odin. Yeah. But then as we move through the year, we've added a Pride Month in July, but there are a few other religion festivals. We get to Ramadan. Now, I remember Ramadan. When I was in secondary school, one of my friends, she celebrated Ramadan every year. And it used to really freak us all out. But only because we all felt really, really guilty. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when you're all in school and your parents make you pack lunches and you never sat in the cafeteria because, it wasn't cool to sit in the cafeteria because it's just no. So you all sat outside with your mates. But if you had a friend who celebrated Ramadan and fasted, I don't know about you, but I used to feel really guilty. All of us used to feel really, really weird eating around her, because we knew that she would eat, but she'd eat when the sun went down, because that's what they do. See, Ramadan is about remembering those that are less fortunate than them. It's about the 5 pillars of Allah, and it got a bit muddled in my head after that while I was reading it, and I was like, okay, I don't quite understand all of that, but yeah. But the basics of Ramadan is about remembering and understanding that there are those that are less fortunate, and so by fasting during the day, they pray to Allah and through Muhammad, if I'm not mistaken, and to remember those that are less fortunate than them. And then when the sun goes down, they can eat. And they do this for 15 days. And then they can eat as much as they like. So yeah. And then it's over, obviously. But yeah, we always found that during the day, it was very difficult for us to eat around her, because we knew why she was doing it, and we knew that she would eat eventually, but we always felt bad eating around her. You know, we knew she wasn't going to starve, we knew she was going to eat, but we were all eating when she wasn't allowed to. You know, so we used to try and distract her. It's like a couple of us would like distract her and talk to her while some of us ate, and then the rest of us would distract her while the rest of them ate. She knew what we were doing, and it was sweet that she went along with it. And it helped all of us in the end. But yeah, she knew why we were doing it, and she knew what we were doing. And it was great that we all went along with everything, but it was weird and it was strange, but yeah. But we do get to a point in our lives where we forget how to be tolerant of those who are in these other religions, or why they are part of these other religions, doing all this kind of stuff. You know, and it's very hard to remember what's going on around us when the world throws the same things at us. They throw Easter in our face and ignore the Chinese New Year. They ignore Ramadan. They ignore all the other all the other religions. I know Hindu has a lot of religious festivals. I know you get Rom Kippur around the same time as around the same time. I forgot what I was going to say then. Head's gone blank. But yeah, and so around the same time as Ramadan, you get Rom Kippur, and that's kind of why they do it. They kind of work side by side together. Actually, if you look up Ramadan, it will tell you that Rom Kippur and Ramadan are roughly around the same thing. It's to do with remembering the less fortunate. So yeah, though I do need a bit of research on Rom Kippur because it got a bit much for my head. But then as you move through the year, you then get Halloween, which gets loads of attention. Everybody knows what Halloween is. It's completely pagan, and it's about... It's not this concept of devil worship. It is about the devils. When it first started and when it first came about, there was this concept of you dress up in devil costumes to ward off evil. It sounds a bit counterproductive, but actually that's what they believed. They believed that if you dressed in devil costumes, walked the streets at night, it would ward off all of the evil spirits that were there. And that's what they did. So yeah, and of course over time it has changed to literally being a night of let's blackmail other people. You know, we dress up in costumes to knock on strangers' doors, blackmail people into giving us candy, or we're going to vandalise their property. That's kind of what we're doing now. So I mean, we now have a society of we're going to go against everything we teach our children not to do and do it all now. Just because it's Halloween night, we can get away with dressing up to scare people, knocking on strangers' doors, accepting candy from strangers, and blackmailing strangers or people to give us stuff, or we can vandalise their property and get away with it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but half of that stuff is illegal, and we teach our kids not to do that every other night of the year. I think you gathered by my point, I don't celebrate it. Yeah, I think there's a lot wrong with Halloween and what we've made it. But it is completely pagan, and it's completely, yeah. Then we get to Thanksgiving, which is an American holiday. I mean, I know that in Brazil they have a version of that where they have the carnival and they have a Day of the Dead celebration where they pay their respects to their dead. And it's not the same thing where they actually do, although I know they dress up, but they then homage their dead. They actually pay homage to their dead. And they do believe that they come back for one night and they can communicate with them. I know that that's what they believe. That's what they believe does happen. So yeah. Which I actually find very interesting, but yeah. But the Thanksgiving that you find in America is literally to do with the first settlements and the fact that the original, well, the the actual people of America, well, of the country before it was America, actually helped them survive. So yeah, that's what that is all about. I'm not quite sure what it is today. I'm hoping it's still the same thing, but yeah. I know they are still very much the same kind of thing. I don't think it's really changed much over the years. And then of course you don't get Christmas. Christmas again is very Nordic in its religion, in its background. But before you get to Christmas, you get to the Jewish festival of shit, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, it's a Jewish festival, and it's to do with the 7 candles of, oh my god, head's gone blank. And I wish I could remember what it's called. Do you know what? I'll remember what it's called later, and it will, yeah. They celebrate it before Christmas. Between November and actual Christmas Day, there is a 7-day Jewish festival, and I cannot remember for the life of me what the hell it's called. I knew it about 20 minutes ago, and now I can't remember. But yeah. But yeah, and it's to do with the temple and the fact they ran out of oil. And when they ran out of oil, they had lit their candle, and God allowed it to last for 7 days while they made some more oil and blessed it. And because of it, they now celebrate this. They don't celebrate Christmas as such, they celebrate this particular festival, and I cannot remember what the fuck it's called. And it's going to kill me. Anyway, look it up, write it in the comments, show me up for an idiot, go for it. I know what it is, I just can't remember the name for it. But that's what it's for. It's to show how God blessed them in that time to keep the light going for them when they run out of oil for their candles. I can't remember what the candle's called either, and that's, yeah, you can tell I'm going blank. Brain's not working. Yeah, my brain does this, by the way. I run out of words and brain goes a bit blank. It's part of my FND. It's where brain can't remember words of things, important things, or anything really. It is part of my FND, which gets a bit annoying, gets a bit whatever. So yeah. So if you find it, write it in the comments. If I find it, I'll write it in the comments. I will go find it and I'll write it in the comments. But so yeah, that's what they do, and they do it for 7 days, and then you get to Christmas. Now, Christmas is pagan, completely pagan, and started with the Nords. They do it to celebrate the end of a harsh winter. And that's exactly what it's for. It's to celebrate the end of a harsh winter. Because over there in the Nordics, the Greenland, and in the Arctic, they have very harsh winters where nothing grows and nothing is productive. So they celebrate the end of that around the 25th of December. Where it all ends and they can start regrowing things and planting new crops, and so they start doing all of that. And the tree actually was to do with blessings of the land. So yeah, that was kind of interesting to read. But yeah, it's all pagan. It's not actually Christian in any way, shape or form. So we adopted it when England became religious, when we became Catholic or Christian or whatever you want to call it. We adopted it all and we changed it to suit us, and it kind of spread. And we chose the 25th of December as Christ's birthday so that we could celebrate it as that, because it made sense at the time. So we didn't have to find another date for it. But the reality is, Christ, if you actually look at Jewish, if you actually look at their timeline and the way that their land works and the way that their culture works, you would understand that there was no way that Christ could ever have been born on Christmas, because they couldn't actually have been shepherds in a field watching sheep in December. It would have been too cold for them. But if you take it back a couple of months to September and the beginning of October, you will find that it's about right for the timeline, because that is when they would be actually out in the fields. There would be shepherds out at night, there would be flocks of sheep in the fields, and that is when, if you actually take a look at their history, that is about the right time for when Christ's birth could actually have potentially happened. So we're looking at end of September, beginning of October. So they've actually worked it out. So he was born right at the end of September, possibly 1st of October. And, couldn't have been much later than that, or sort of right first few days of October. Couldn't have been much later than that because of, their climate. So although we do say he was born then, we just celebrate his birth then, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, it's just a contrast of, we made a date, we decided to celebrate. So yeah, hang on a minute, I'll just answer the door. Anyway, sorry this thing was so long, but kind of did want to make sure that I covered as many bases as possible with this one, because I do find it interesting that there is so much that goes on throughout the year, and what we do celebrate doesn't even cover half of what happens. And the way we do celebrate things doesn't necessarily mean they're right. You know, Easter it isn't just about Christ's birth, death, and about Christ's death and resurrection. There is so much more that goes into it. You know, that Easter weekend is, but if you're Catholic, the whole thing about the Lent, it is actually pagan. It doesn't belong to the Catholics. It's Nordic in its background. If you're celebrating Christmas, so many of us go, but it's a Christian, it's Christian, blah, 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 blah. It's not. We adopted it. We took over. It's Nordic. It's from the Greenlands and the Nordic regions because it's pagan and we adopted it. We took it for our own and chose it as our date to celebrate Christ's birth when he actually was born in September, beginning of October. But Halloween is celebrated in more than one way. And in places like Brazil, it is literally a way to contact their dead and pay homage. In the rest of the Western world, we're treating it as a way to break the law. For fun. You know. And it's lost its spiritual meaning. You know, because there was one. It was a way to ward off evil, which were strongest on that particular night. They had the strongest connection to this world. So they could have crossed over on that night. And it was used to ward them off. They dressed up to ward them off. And now it's used to break the law for fun. It had a spiritual meaning. You know, there are other religious festivals out there for other people that had other meanings, that have other meanings, that we ignore completely, totally and utterly. Like Ramadan, like today, Chinese New Year, which will be celebrated by the Chinese, which will be celebrated by the Chinese across the globe. You know, and we'll ignore it. And there are going to be many other religious festivals that will happen throughout this year. So remember that if you have people of other faiths that are in your life, or if you are someone of a different faith that isn't Christian or Catholic, your religion, your faith, your festivals, they matter. They are important, and you shouldn't have to hide them or pretend or have them be insignificant just because they're not Christian or Catholic. You know, tell the world all about them. I don't know, make a video. I don't know, stick it in my comments, tell me about them. I'd love to hear about your festivals that you tell me about them. You know, if I've missed them out, I'm pretty sure I've missed out loads. But yeah, tell me about them. You know, but tell the world, show them who they are, who you are, what matters to you guys. I know this video is way longer than normal, but anyway, I'm going to go because, yeah, it's getting a little chilly. But yeah, have a great day. All right, and Happy New Year.